You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Welcome, everyone, to Boomers Today. I am Cynthia Perkins, and today I'm filling in for Frank Sampson. I am so very honored to have Bruce Nathanson as my guest today. Now, Bruce works with a very interesting benefit to companies and their employees that can help support staff during times of great stress. Now, today's sponsor is Senior Care Authority, a national elder care consulting company specializing in senior living. With over 75 locations around the country, Senior Care Authority's team of certified senior advisors work in person with older adults and their families to find the best care and living options. If you have questions or need help navigating the maze of senior care and living options, reach out to Senior Care Authority for a free consultation. You can go to www.seniorcareauthority.com to find a local representative and get the help you need. So, before we get into the details about this benefit for employees, I recently read an article in Health and Wellness magazine that you wrote, Bruce, about being an adult child. So can you tell me about that experience, that adult child experience?
Well, I thought being an adult child was an oxymoron. And then I realized it was my life. Excuse me. It was really a situation where I realized that despite all my experience in the workforce and my years, I was taking care of my parents. I was an adult child. I had two parents who were both living at the time, and they were on very different trajectories. Dad was dealing with cancer and orthopedic issues. And after he passed, Mom had progressive dementia, which was exacerbated by a fall and a broken hip. So I realized that as an adult child and as someone who had some familiarity with the elder care environment, I was the lead caregiver, and I had to figure it out as I went along. And the resources weren't there at work. I had to really come up with the questions and then find the answers all on my own.
Yeah, you know what? I was an adult child, and I have a feeling many people on this listening to this podcast were also adult children. Adult child was not a word that I'd ever thought about or had put together. And I was in that same position where I had parents that needed me to take care of them. And I just really didn't know where to go or what to do. I feel like I could have written the article that you wrote, but I never took the time to do it. So I really am glad you did it. We'll make sure we put that link in the body of this podcast so that people can see that. How many people do you think are being adult children?
Thousands and thousands. You know, there's so many people at work who are doubling as caregivers for an older adult. I think the figure is 1 in 6 employees is doubling as a caregiver. So it's really a very, very prevalent issue in the workforce today. And it's increasing. There's 17% of employees are caregiving, up from 14% just a couple of years ago. So it's really on the rise, and it's really an important issue that needs to be addressed.
Right. So I appreciate you talking about being an adult child and kind of, putting us all on a level playing field, that we were all there. Again, as I always tell people, the reason I got into this industry was because I was that adult child. And while my friends were nice to me while I was being an adult child, as soon as I finished being an adult child, that my phone was ringing off the hook of what did you do? How did you do it? You know, what was going on there. And I recently finished reading a book called Lessons by Ian McEwan. And it's a book around really this man's life. But there's a section of it where he comes up and he says, how did we all get to this place that all we talk about at dinner parties is what we're going to do with our parents and how we're going to help our parents. And how do we want to be treated? And then the book goes on where his children are taking care of him. So it's a very interesting topic I see everywhere. But you mentioned earlier in talking about the adult children, how many people are working and being adult children. So let's talk about what type of stress, besides doing their job, that these employees can feel while they're at the workplace.
Well, it takes about 20 hours a week on average to deal with a parent who is older and has some clinical issues. So you can bet that those 20 hours a week are really going to come in the middle of work time. Mom's doctor appointments don't happen on nights and weekends. They happen right in the middle of the business day. So people are stressed there and really juggling to do the best possible job they can at work and to be the best possible caregiver that they can be. So it's really, really pulling or burning the candle at both ends. It's really a challenge.
Right. I mean, I know when I was being that adult child giver, I had a very stressful job anyway, even if all I had to do was take care of myself. But not only did I have that stressful job, I traveled 100,000 miles a year. I had children. So I was in that, a term we don't hear a lot about anymore, but the sandwich generation, where I was taking care of my children and I was taking care of my parents. And the travel and the work, and it just was breaking me almost at every moment, every day, while I tried to deal with that stress.
Well, there's so much that you can do to alleviate the stress, and this is where the ease people can really help. But it's things that everybody can do on their own too.
Oh, so hold on, let me ask you a question. The ease people. We haven't really talked about that. Talk to me about what that means, the ease people.
Sure. Well, EASE is the program that I represent. EASE stands for Employee Assistance Solutions for Elder Care, and it's a benefit package that corporations can take advantage of to provide an array of services for their employees who are doubling as caregivers. Very much in need today. Employees are so highly stressed at work. Mental health is a huge issue today. That's part of the economy that they work in. It's part of the inflationary pressures that everyone faces. And the fact that they're trying to do their jobs, sometimes at home, sometimes in the office, and oftentimes in a hybrid mode. But what it really represents for them is just a tremendous amount of stress. And a program like EASE can really help reduce that kind of stress for the employee and ultimately benefit the employer as well.
Okay, so that's good to know that there is a program out there that can help employees through this stress. How does the EASE program help the stress level of the employee?
Well, there are three things that it can really do. And these are benefits both for the employee, but in a sense for the employer as well. It can reduce absenteeism so that people are not taking the unscheduled absences, that they have a trusted third-party advisor to help them with some of the tasks that go along with caregiving. It can help them be present and focused at work, so that they're not of split mind. When they're at work, they're really focused on the tasks and they're being more productive. And overall, it can help their well-being, reduce their stress levels, improve their work-life balance, and basically make them more fit and able to do a good job and to be in better physical health themselves. It's so important for employees who are caregivers to really have that balance and to really be able to take care of themselves. So this program really is a tool to be able to do that.
Okay, so let's open up the toolbox a little bit. What are the tools that are in that toolbox to help them, again, to relieve that stress, to help with the absenteeism, to help with one of my new favorite words, presenteeism, and to help with the mental health piece? Tell me some of the tools that are in there that will help.
Well, there are basically 6 services that come along with the EASE program. The first is that we'll work with employees to really understand what their needs are, not only their own individual needs, but the needs of their family. So we can really have a very good assessment. What's the baseline? Where are they? And what are they looking for? And how can we really help? We'll provide referral services so that we can introduce the employees to local resources that are really able to help them with specific things such as legal services, getting their healthcare proxies and their powers of attorney in order, getting financial services. If home care is where they are right now, getting the right home care services. And if it turns out that mom or dad is ready for a move to a senior residence, we'll provide a residential placement service where we can really understand what somebody's needs are and match them up perfectly with the right residents so that they'll be very well suited and they'll be very comfortable and productive and safe. And whether the services include a need for independent living or assisted living or memory care or even skilled nursing, we'll make that determination together with the families and make the right introductions. And we'll actually walk the families in. We'll be their escort and their advisor and their advocate through the whole process. We provide a wealth of educational services for corporations and for the employees. We'll provide webinars and seminars and newsletters, and we'll construct a portal so that with great confidentiality, employees can tap into the system and take advantage of the services. We'll provide family coaching and counseling services so that we can help people have the conversations at the right times. It's not one conversation, it's a series of conversations as you go through the arc of becoming older or caring for an older adult. And finally, we provide a service called Beyond Driving with Dignity, which is a self-assessment service that we can help older adults make the determination of whether or not they should be behind the wheel and whether they should hold on to those keys or give up the keys.
No, those all sound like things that are much needed and things that I wish I had when I was in the role that I was in as the adult child. I wasn't aware that there were any type of services that helped with that. One of the things I know that you mentioned, and I'm going to put on my employer hat because I do employ people, but I've also worked in corporations and had companies where I was the employer or where I was the manager. So I think one of the things you mentioned was that 1 in 6 employees, so that's 17% of employees. So I think about 17% of my team spends 20 hours a week on average helping their parents. And most of that is during work hours. So basically what you're saying is that 17% of the employees are only working 50% of the week on that widget or that service or whatever it is that employer makes and how they make their money. That 17% of those employees are only working half the time. Would that be fair to say?
Well, I think it's true to say that their mind is split. If they're working at home, perhaps they're going to do their work late at night, which isn't very conducive to a good work-life balance. So yeah, they may be getting the job done. It may not be their best effort, and it's going to be accompanied with some stress and some anxiety. So something's got to suffer. So I don't think they're giving it half of an effort, but I think that something has fallen by the wayside along the way.
Right. And I think one of the things you mentioned earlier about why you have this, why it's important for the employer is the fact that there's the absenteeism, the presenteeism, and then the mental health piece of it. We have a mental health problem in this country. And one of the things that I know that I saw recently was in a presentation that I saw in New York City. And the person who was speaking talked about that the company that she works for, a global multi-billion-dollar company, had added full-time psychologists, full-time therapists, that they had a department of therapists to help their employees with anxiety issues. And a lot of this was around PTSD with COVID. But if you add in the PTSD with COVID, the other mental health issues, and then the fact that 10,000 people a day turn 65 and the aging of America, those are all things that cause mental health issues. And we know that as a caregiver, there's some mental health issues that can cause their death before the person that they're caring for.
Sure. These benefits you talk about, they fall under the guise of an employee assistance program, and they're very helpful to have this kind of counseling. But they don't go as deep always as what is really required in the situation. And that's where a program like EASE can so easily complement an employee assistance program, because it provides that extra layer of support, and it's coordinated. So, the EASE advisors work very closely with employee assistance program counselors to really pick up the needs of the family and to translate it into specific action plans. So it's a very complementary service. It doesn't replace, it sort of layers on top of.
Well, now, wouldn't you think that because this is such a situation we have in our country about people aging and the mental health piece and the absenteeism, wouldn't you think that I would think that these employers already had some program like this?
Well, oftentimes they think they do. And this is the gap between what employers think they're offering and how wonderful it is, and how lacking it is in terms of employees' view of what's being offered. There's a great gap, and it's a growing gap. So what employers tend to offer are 800 numbers. Here's a service, you call this 800 number, and they're going to match mom up with the right place for her to go. And generally, they'll give you 8, 10, or 12 different residences that you ought to check out on your own, make your own appointments, you can figure out your own transportation and go visit them and knock yourself out. And you will knock yourself out. It's an amazingly stressful and exhausting process to try to do that on your own. What a program like EASE can do is limit that. By understanding our clients and their needs, we can narrow that whole mix down to, here are the 2 or maybe 3 places that are right for you, and we'll make the appointments, and we'll really escort you there and guide you through, and have the conversations after the meeting to see what your likes and your dislikes and your wishes are, so we can really see if the fit is right. But with our experience, we can get you into the places where you're going to say it's either this, or that, rather than yes or no. I think we'll be able to find the place that it's right.
Well, what if a lot of people will say, oh, but you know what, my parents are never going to move anyplace anyway, they're going to stay home. Does the EASE service help with that situation?
Well, sometimes home is the right option for people. And if you can live at home safely and productively, and you need some services, we'll get the right home care people in there to give you some assist. But oftentimes people become a prisoner in their own home, and it becomes, this great challenge, because I've only wanted to stay here for the rest of my life, and this is, the only place that I can be happy. I'm going to stay here at all costs, and it's a negative result. And by opening up, your mind and to the options that exist, sometimes moving to a senior residence makes all the difference in the world. All of a sudden, there's socialization, there's entertainment, there's mental stimulation, there's good nutrition and really, excellent food. There's clinical care on site, which really just increases independence and really great rewards in living. So I think if you can really get out of the mode that home is the only place I can ever be happy, you'll see that there's a world out there that does provide an awful lot.
Well, and I agree with you. But I do know that one of the things you mentioned sounds like it would fit into the category of people staying home, but that would be the consulting portion of it. That there's the placement piece, but then there's also a consulting where you can help people figure out how to make it work at home. As I understand it, on the consulting piece, it also helps with maybe family facilitation discussions, because we have families that are all over the country. Maybe you yourself work in New York City, but your mother lives in Chicago, and your sister lives in California, and your brother lives in Texas. And how do those people all get together? As I hear it, it seems like that consulting piece would maybe fit into that benefit as well.
Well, Zoom is a wonderful thing. You can really bring people in all parts of the country together very easily, very quickly. But it's really important also that if the employee, lives or works in New York, but mom is in another city, whether it's Chicago or Des Moines, it doesn't matter, because we have the partnerships to be able to provide that service across geographies. And that's really important to do,
Right.
because our client is not just the employer. Our client is the family, the extended family for the employee. So it's so important to be able to have those conversations. And it's not one conversation, it's a series of conversations. The earlier you start having them, the more productive and the better the result is. Having conversations with mom and dad are well before the issues set in. But as we're planning our way down the road, and then it's really important to understand what people want in the next chapter of their lives and to be able to provide for it. So that's just really important in the planning process.
Something else I think you mentioned that I heard you mention was the fact that this service has a lot of content that's provided in there. So are we talking about webinars or reading materials or podcast, or, what are we talking about from a content standpoint?
There's so much to understand about dementia in and of itself that is just a huge issue. So it's what's it like to experience dementia? What's it like for family members? What's it like to caregive for somebody who is suffering from dementia? What's the progression of the disease? Is it fast or slow? There's so much to learn about dementia and the related disease, which is Alzheimer's, a subset of dementia, to understand what goes on in that context as well. And then there's a whole other track of learning materials about senior care living. What are the options? Everybody kind of lumps, an elder care facility into the guise of that must mean a nursing home. It's not. Nursing homes are right. They're there for people who need them, and they provide wonderful care, better now than ever. But there's a whole array of other options, including independent living, where people are really living in an apartment. If they need support services, they're there. But they're active, they're mobile, some drive, some people work. There's memory care and assisted living, where you can get more clinical needs taken care of. So the array of choices is great, and understanding where you are on the spectrum. And if you'll need to move through that spectrum, these are things that we can guide people to do. Oftentimes, our clients will be placed in independent living, and they'll be happy there for a period of time. Sometimes there's some dissatisfaction, and we can sort of be advocates to make sure that we can take care of the issues that are affecting, their happiness, and we'll provide services that increase peace of mind. Sometimes people need to move from one context, independent living, to the next chapter, which might be assisted living, and we can help make that move as well. So we can really guide people through the process as needed. Again, this is all very customized. Everybody's pathway is unique. No two clients are the same. But when you understand and know the people that you're working with, we can make these kinds of transitions really as seamless as possible.
Well, I think the whole idea of having a benefit for people who are working in corporate America, or even in small companies, small mom and pop companies within smaller towns or in big towns, this is not just something for Fortune 500 companies. This is for someone who has employees, 10 employees, 20 employees. Those people are also still dealing with this situation. And I just find it interesting that in doing some research before we met today, I was reading about benefits that are with employers, and they've got people who are clamoring for pet insurance as one of their benefits, and they're looking into getting pet insurance. And I have to believe that if they're and they feed everybody, a lot of meals in their corporations. And so if they're feeding them and they're getting them pet insurance, how can they not be trying to help them take care of their parents?
Well, there's nothing more noble than taking care of your parents. It really is one of the hardest and greatest challenges, but also one of the most rewarding challenges. I know in my own experience, I gave it everything I had. I brought in my siblings, my brother and my sister, and they helped, but I was the lead. And there was, at the end, a great feeling of exhaustion, but also rewards, because ultimately my parents had a good life at the end, and I can say they had a good death. They were comfortable, they were cared for, and they were loved. And I think the rewards of being a caregiver and having good advice along the way is just the most important thing.
I love talking to people who are so passionate about what they do and passionate about the things that they care for. And I want other people to talk to you about your passion around this. So what is your email address, contact? And we'll also have this in the information around the podcast, but what is your email address if people want to get in touch with you about the EASE program?
Well, it's pretty simple. Bruce at seniorcareauthority.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to provide any advice and any help I can along the way.
Great. Bruce, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your knowledge, and I'm glad you were on. And we look forward to following up with you at another time. So we want to see how this program is going. We want to make sure that the employees in this country are taken care of as they take care of their parents. So thank you for joining us. And again, this is Cynthia Perfuse for Boomers Today.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.